What's going on, y'all? Okay, so I wanted to talk to you all about a subject today that I realize is kind of the root of what's going on in terms of belief and in terms on how we identify the things that we know. Now, I noticed one thing when I'm dealing with people that people who tend not to want to believe in a God, and it's just broad, and fundamentally choose not to do so because in essence and in practice, they want to be God. And let me explain what that means. See, God has determined right and wrong. And when you don't want to adhere to a moral code of another, then you tend to want to adhere to your own. And I get people say, well, yeah, I should be able to do what I want. But here's the problem with that. See, in a world full of opinions and preferences, then this explains the world we live in today. You know, everyone who does something wrong or does something terrible is living according to their own personal moral code and is determining right and wrong according to their own. So we have a problem in a world where everybody gets to play God and everybody gets to be their own, set their own moral standard of rules and righteousness and evil, you know. Hence the Bible saying that the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It makes sense. And it's a very simple concept. You know, Adam and Eve were adhered to God's standard of obedience and instructions. But the moment that they did what they weren't supposed to do, they were able to decide, you know, based on their broken nature, their own set of right and wrong. And we live in today's world, we see how that worked out. So I just want to get to the root of the foundations that people build their beliefs on and the way of thinking on, and expose them for what they truly reflect. Now, I know a lot of people say, well, science this and science that. Let me be the first to say there is a scientism. You have to understand, this world has a higher agenda than most people think. Science basically just describes what we see, but it does not define what we see. And that might seem similar, but it's not, and I'll get to that. See, science just gives us the data that is interpreted, by the way, subjectively by a person, a fallible person with a presupposed knowledge. Let's think about presupposed knowledge. That means that some authoritative governing body had at some point predetermined what things are and how they should be, right? So you either following God or you following the authority of someone you don't know anyway. But let's get to that. Okay, so science just gives us the data interpreted by presupposed knowledge that is ultimately determined by an authoritative governing body that has its own agenda. You know, there is still a moral standard that transcends the science itself, because if a scientist doesn't have a moral code, and what keeps him honest about his results and keeps him from corrupting his results to produce a desired effect or to push a desired agenda. And we see that in the medical industry. We see that they manipulate many things. The theory of evolution, it has an agenda to basically justify a series of behaviors that have proven very detrimental to society. You know, but we'll move on. So we have to use, you know, they use that a moral standard has to be in place before the science is even there to determine if the data is good or not. You know, and for what reasons? Since it's from subjective interpretation, that is still a moral standard, being the hierarchy overall of the data. And how do we determine what is true and what is a lie, even from the scientific community? Just because science says something, just because someone with a degree says something, doesn't mean it's true. Every day it comes out that things were built on lies and for nefarious reasons. So this video is going to be quite serious. So I'm gonna get to a little epistemology, which is basically how do we know what we know. Let's talk about what knowledge is. Knowledge is facts, info, and skills acquired by a person through experience or education. Let's talk about experience. Experiences are subjective, and educations are taught through indoctrinations. There we go with that authoritative governing body, taught, indoctrinated. And there are theoretical or practical understandings of a subject. Understandings, meaning that it's a subjective view of a person. See, we're still relying on faith of what some person said. We have not gotten away from that original point. Okay. Observation is a subjective view that is relative to subjective knowledge. So when someone observes something, that's their perspective of what the knowledge that has been indoctrinated into them has allowed them to reveal, to themselves individually. You can have many scientists see the same thing and have very different observations and interpretations of what they see. Because, again, this is subjective knowledge that is presupposed and predefined by that authoritative governing body that people don't want to submit to God, but they will submit to this shadow cabinet behind the government that has told you that everything that you know is what it is for the reasons that they predetermine. So, yeah, this is going to be crazy. Everything that we know and see is based on us having faith in what we've been told. We know that an apple is an apple because someone defined its appearance based on a subjective theoretical knowledge and established by an authoritative governing body to be universally identified, meaning that someone named, the Bible says that God gave Adam the dominion to name everything, right? But when you don't believe in the Bible, who was the progenitor of what we call the things that we call them and give them the attributes and characteristics defined by the words we choose to use? No one wants to get into that because everybody wants to use science, but science is just having faith that one person a long time ago was a progenitor of saying that this thing described by these words has this desired effect for these reasons. So you're still taking the faith of that same infallible man that y'all claim wrote the Bible, that it has all these errors in it, but you're still taking the faith of an infallible person using theoretical knowledge that hasn't been proven. If you don't believe me, explain the Big Bang Theory and explain how rocks turn into living organisms. Okay. So let's talk about this next. Let's say everything that we know and see is based on us having faith. We got to that. So let's talk about observation again. Let's think about how the eye works, right? Okay. Light goes into your eye. And that light goes into your eye and is processed in your brain. Your brain determines what it identifies based on the indoctrination of knowledge that is in your mind to define what you're seeing as an image on the inside of your lid. So your eye works just like your television. The knowledge is coming from the inside and it's projected on the screen. Same thing with your eye. Light goes in your eye, processed in your brain, reflected on the inside of your eye, refracted, turned around, so that it appears that what you see is from the outside in, but it's from the inside out. So what you have been taught and defined and what has been revealed to you determines how you see and what you see. Now we get to the real issues here. Sorry, I had to take notes. This is a lot to work on, so I'm not going to get up here off the cuff and just do it that way. Okay. Okay. Let's do it this way. Let's talk about the scientific method. See, look, man, I'm a logical, reasonable person, okay? Let's talk about what the scientific method is. It's a systematic observation, measurement and experiments in the formulation, testing and modification of hypotheses. Explored observations, the way to acquire knowledge. And here's the thing about the scientific method. New info or new thinking can affect that process. So as we learn and discover new way of things, then that same method, it can be altered to fit whatever new knowledge, and we know knowledge is subjective, and new thinking, and thinking is affected by the definition of the knowledge that we've been indoctrinated to know by an authoritative governing body to affect the whole process of how we identify everything. I know I done lost most people right now, and I don't blame you. let's talk about science is subjective, imaginative observations, folks. It's basically somebody using presupposed knowledge and their imagination to determine something and then test based on those presuppositions and that indoctrinated knowledge to create a desired effect that wasn't originally intended. So, let's look at it, and okay, so now I done basically exposed science, so let's talk about the Bible, right? Okay, the Bible includes claims of divine experiences and revealed knowledge that brings a person into a personal relationship with their creator to know purpose and meaning defined by a presumed source, revealed also by supernatural events with an eyewitness to substantiate that claim. So basically, the Bible is basically people are going off the Bible by supernatural experiences and revealed knowledge. Because if you think about it, the issue with Christ is that he did things that no man can do, and he defeated the one thing that no man has been able to defeat, and that is death. Now, if God wanted to come into our broken lives and to, the issue of mankind is their wickedness and the fact that we cannot defeat death. And even before you know God, you know that death is a problem. You don't have to believe in God to fear death. Because if you don't believe in God, then death is really oblivion for you. Good luck turning to nothing. So, and if you are turning to nothing, then maybe that just means you were nothing to begin with. So, let's talk about science claiming and using the scientific method as being testable and repeatable. Well, all the things that really define science are not testable and repeatable. There's no instance where someone created something out of nothing. And again, that goes back to the intelligent design that science uses to describe things and use the already pre-created materials to, basically embellish further on what is already there. They're not creating anything new. They're not making something out of nothing. So, all of the presuppositions that people make about science, about it being, we can recreate a Big Bang, or we can prove evolution in real time. It's not true. Sorry, folks. It's a theory. It's a theory of evolution, and it's the theory of the Big Bang. And most of the science that you've been taught is theories. This is why your doctor can lie to you for profit. Can tell you taking these drugs that actually cause more adverse effects than using the natural things that were already existed in creation. This is why people want to rely on man on how to take care of their body more than the revealed knowledge in creation. And how does that work out for people? All right? God is not telling people to go destroy their bodies and take drugs and ignore the revealed knowledge of the corruption in our food supply and our water. God is not telling people this. This is people wanting to believe a man, a person, okay? A person that's using the things, the corrupt things of the world, not the natural things of the world, but the corrupt things of the world to lie and produce false knowledge. So the issue with science is that once meaning and words are established in life, you live by faith. Faith that that you're trusting the presupposed knowledge and theoretical understandings of someone who came before that had enough authority to establish a definition uniformly across the world. You're trusting that person, or you can trust God, who uses his own creation and the imprint of our own design internally to reveal himself. It's funny, the most objective knowledge that someone can have to prove God is yourself. It's your mind, your brain, particularly your mind. And so I'm going to put a pin on this because I don't want these videos to be too long, but I'm going to get to the next subject later. Peace.